Hi, I'm Professor Brian Horrigan, and it's my privilege to be the Executive Dean of the Faculty of Law at Monash University at the start of its 60th anniversary year. And I'm here with one of Monash Law's mooting champions, William Liu. Hi, William.
Hi, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to be here with you. William has an exceptional track record in the moot court. He was a key member of teams that won the Administrative Appeals Tribunal National Mooting Competition and also the Ian Fletcher International Insolvency Moot in 2022. William graduated in 2024 with a Bachelor of Laws Honours and a Bachelor of Arts, and he won the Sir Charles Low Moot Prize in the same year. Needless to say, he's a big fan of the state-of-the-art moot court here at Monash Law, where we're filming. So William, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your experience and mooting, and we might just go through a few questions if that's all right.
Of course.
Let's start with a definition. For our audience, how would you describe mooting?
Mooting is essentially debating for law students, I would say. You begin with a simulated problem question and you have to make submissions and present your case for your client in front of a number of judges usually. So it usually takes about 20 to 40 minutes for each side. So it's, I suppose, a microcosm of the entire court process, but it's a really great way for students to learn advocacy, get comfortable in the courtroom, and also make friends through inter-university competitions and so forth. So that's how I'd probably start by defining mooting.
Okay, so I really like the way you started there about it. Mooting is debating and public speaking for law students. So if someone watching this is a student at school, and they like speaking and they do public speaking or debating or getting into those sort of things, or they've done the UN Youth Forum sort of stuff, that mooting is a natural transition is the sense I'm getting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I was in high school, I did quite a bit of debating, and what I really liked about mooting is you retain a lot of the skill set, I suppose, that logical, argumentative thinking, the importance of presenting clearly and coherently and concisely, but you're getting to actually apply what you're learning in the classroom and also honing your research skills as well, and combining that all together in this one quite fast-paced activity. So, yeah.
So I suppose some people looking at this and doing research, desktop research on the web, might come across other descriptions such as that it's a mock trial, but of course mooting can involve a trial, it can involve an appeal, it can involve a sentencing submission, it can involve a whole range of things.
Absolutely. Okay. Probably the most common is an appeal. The reason is because you don't need to elicit evidence, for instance. It's pure legal argument, but you do have other forms of moots as well.
When you were growing up, you didn't know any lawyers, so I guess you didn't know about mooting either. But when you arrived at Monash Law, what were your expectations of your university studies?
I think when I started, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I knew that it would probably be an intellectual challenge. Obviously, it's a prestigious and difficult course sometimes to get into. But I think the actual experience of it, though, absolutely hooked me straight away. It was critical thinking and philosophical thinking applied to everyday situations, and the sort of study that you do looking at cases, trying to divine principles and rules out of the law. For me, that really resonated with how I like to think about the world and study as well. So I didn't know what it was going to be like at all, but I did really enjoy it when I dived in.
So the things you're remembering about starting off sound as though it's about introducing you to sort of a new world that has a bit of theory and a bit of substantive law and practice, but also a way of thinking. Is that one of the chief things you remember, that it's teaching you a new way of thinking that can be relevant in legal careers, but other careers as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I think especially in some of the introductory courses that Monash offers, Foundations of Law, for instance, there's a really big emphasis on thinking like a lawyer and writing like a lawyer, which is often quite different to how people talk in everyday life. Often there's a lot more perhaps rhetoric and emotional persuasion and that sort of thing. Whereas I think in our system anyway, we tend to pride ourselves on concision, getting to the point, and expressing things in a dispassionate and logical way. So
I suppose, given that law is so much about problem solving, whether it's solving a macroscopic problem like what do we do about climate change and how do we regulate things to ensure that we still have a planet, or whether it's a problem involving two people who sue one another, or the state prosecuting someone in a criminal matter, is it fair to say that your sense from the first year was that what law is getting you to understand is that there's a systematic way of going about problem solving?
There is a systematic way, although the system is constantly being refined. It's taking in examples where the system has worked and perhaps hasn't worked as well, and it's this constant striving, I suppose, towards some notion of justice. So it's a set of rules, but it's evolving, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was it about mooting, which probably, I don't know when you were introduced to it, was it right from the start or in class or in student run competitions, but what was it, whenever it occurred, what was it about mooting that first struck a chord with you?
I think it really rewards creative and critical thinking. I think what I loved most about mooting was you had a problem and you had a case to argue, but you could run it in any way that you wanted. It was completely up to you. You could research precedents, perhaps the main ones that everyone's familiar with. You could look up more obscure precedents and try and formulate arguments that are a little bit more left field. And it's this combination, I suppose, of analytical thinking, research, but also clear expression and persuasion. And I like things with a lot of moving parts that I think can be picked up quite easily, but perhaps take a lifetime to master. So that was really appealing to me.
Okay. As I've been listening to you, one of the things it's sort of triggered for me is a memory of an alumni who said to me that they'd been involved in coming back and doing some of the trial moots and helping out with the various mooting competitions with students, and they said one of the things they noticed that was common was that students put all this time and focus on writing the brief and how they're going to present it and the structure and in what order, but that part of the art of mooting they felt was being able to adjust on your feet in the moment to the way in which the bench, whether it's one judge or arbitrator or three or four, the way in which they're trying to understand the material, because it's fresh to them, even if you live with it for weeks or months. So they're understanding it, and not necessarily from the same angle you have, and not necessarily in the same structure. So you've got to be able to know the stuff, but on your feet, prepared to adapt, to come at it from a different point of entry, because that's what the bench wants to hear. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that I've seen separate, let's say, stronger teams from weaker teams in mooting is that ability to actually be dynamic on your feet and look at where the bench wants to go and is particularly interested or perhaps vexed, and try and resolve those knots for them. Because I think as intelligent, I suppose, as the bench will inevitably be, there's always a limit to how much information someone can process at once. And I feel like if, say, judges are interested in a specific part of the case and you can resolve that for them then and there, you can really make an emotional impact, and that can leave them walking away going, I'm persuaded by the case. It's not simply just working through every single line of the case, paying equal attention to each one of them. It's about that sort of targeted, precise persuasion. And so even though I said earlier that there are logical components to mooting, I think understanding how we think and feel as humans is quite important as well.
And we're all different.
Absolutely.
And there's no one right way to approach a case sometimes.
Exactly.
And
yes.
so I suppose that if you know your material and you know the destination where you want to take the bench, then you can eventually take the bench to that destination, but there might be a number of paths to that destination, and all things being equal, perhaps you need to follow their chosen path, because that will increase your chances of helping them to get to the destination you want.
Absolutely. And I think it's been said before that law is probably more akin to moral philosophy than mathematics. So it's not simply about going from top down and saying, QED, I've resolved the problem, but there is an element of ambiguity and persuasion, and I suppose that's where your role lies as an advocate.
All law, even commercial law, is a species. All legal reasoning is a species of moral reasoning, is what I'm hearing. And
absolutely,
there is a dimension. There are moral, ethical, policy, legal, practical, commercial, jurisprudential, philosophical, societal aspects of law, which is of course what we try at any law school, but particularly Monash Law, to introduce to our students from first year. Mm-hmm. You've just come back from Vienna, where you visited the UN Commission on International Trade Law on a trip that was funded by a stipend from one of your moots. So it's fair to say that mooting has taken you literally around the world. Tell us a little bit about your favourite mooting expedition. Where did you go? What did you do? What was important about it?
I would have to probably say the International Fletcher Moot, an insolvency moot, and that was the one for which I was awarded the stipend. But in fact, to have been able to participate in the moot in the first place was thanks to Monash, obviously through its mooting program, where Monash sponsors students to go overseas, to go interstate, at completely no cost in a lot of cases, as was the case in mine. Before I went into the moot, I had no idea really about insolvency law at all, but through doing the moot and doing well in it, I developed, I think, a bit of an aptitude, but also a liking for the area, and it's probably the area that I want to practice in most now. So it's really changed my path in that way. And then the subsequent trip to Vienna, which arose out of that, was a lot of fun. Getting to see these really competent insolvency lawyers discuss cross-border insolvency, how to sort of unite different jurisdictions' insolvency laws, and seeing the sort of macroeconomic benefit that a sound, consistent set of insolvency laws can have. That was all really incredible, and then getting to see, the Christmas markets and so forth. On top of all that, it's just been an incredible experience from start to finish.
So what I'm also hearing is that sometimes, it doesn't always have to be this way, but sometimes there might be a subject you study, a compulsory subject or an elective, or an experience you have like being in a particular kind of moot. And that could also open up possibilities for you that you may or may not have thought about in terms of areas of law you might want to get interested in a variety of legal careers. So there's a thread between what might happen even from first year to things you might choose later, to getting involved in mooting, and then eventually career links as well. Is that a fair assessment? Absolutely.
And I think Monash is really good with that in the sense that there are a lot of electives for you to choose from. There are lots of extracurricular activities, and just from your time here, I find that you pick up a lot from different areas, and eventually, almost without realising it, you find where your affinities lie just by going through that journey.
So it's great to hear you hear good things that you feel about what we've done here at Monash Law. So this is not too much of a hard sell, but as you provided an opportunity for me as Dean to say a few things, I might add for the benefit of our audience that one of the things that's been pleasing for me as Dean is we've obviously got this great moot court facility. We have a great law student society that works with the faculty on various things, but also runs its own student mooting competitions. So the law student run competitions become incubators for future mooters. And then mooting is something that can also be part of the assessment and part of the work integrated learning experiences during the degree in various subjects. And then the faculty has, for a number of years now, in addition to having these sorts of facilities, provided coaches and financial commitments to send a lot of our students to national and international mooting competitions. And the feedback I have from them and from potential employers is that they recognise that the mooting and related skills of negotiating and client interviewing and arbitration, advocacy and mediating, these are all readily recognisable as transferable skills, not just for the legal profession, but for other careers. So it gives students an opportunity to have something that they can mention in their CV and mention in interviews, and which future employers can see as something that's really important and transferable in that way. And the faculty was fortunate through the success of our students, including yourself, in 2022. I think even in the insolvency moot, did we win the insolvency moot final, Monash Law?
We did, and it was perhaps a particularly satisfying victory because the university that we won against was one that was particularly prominent in the mooting sphere, and it was the first time ever that an Australian team had won that moot since inception.
Well, that's historic, and I'd forgotten those details, I'm sorry.
That's right.
But I do know that there's a body that ranks mooting successes, and as a result of that and others, Monash Law was fortunate through our student successes to be ranked number one in Oceania and hence number one in Australia. And I think in the top 5 in the world in mooting successes in 2022. So I suppose the importance of that for an audience who might be watching this is that an investment by law schools in mooting is recognised by the profession, and it does take a certain level of resources to then let students maximise the opportunities that flow from that. But that a combination of moot court facilities plus resourcing of a mooting program plus having it in the curriculum, as well as having a strong law student society, all of these things come together and produce this kind of rich work integrated learning experience. But we'll go back to the questions, but never get between the Dean and an opportunity to talk proudly about the things that we've all been able to do together. I mentioned our state-of-the-art moot court in the introduction, in which we're now seated. I know I love it, as you've probably gathered by now, but tell me why you're such a big fan of the moot court.
Well, it's a very realistic experience, first of all. You've got state-of-the-art audio-visual technology, you've got the jury box, you've got a public gallery, as it were, and also enough space for multiple judges. So realistic, perhaps, that on the opening of the moot court there was an appeal by the Victorian Court of Appeal heard in this particular court. But I think for me personally, it's just that sense of excitement that you get when you step in, and it really feels like you're in a courtroom, and it's immersive, I suppose, in that way. So I've really enjoyed practicing and mooting, in fact, in the courtroom. And it's a real leg up, I suppose, when you are mooting against other universities. I think little details like how you present on the camera really matter, of course, for virtual moots. So I think it's an amazing resource, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more students benefit from it in future. Okay,
so we might have a lot of school students, and we might have some first year or even second year students who haven't yet done mooting. We might even have some students who have started off at other universities and really want to come to Monash Law and get involved in things like mooting. So we're here in the moot court. What's it like stepping up the first time here to the dispatch box, arguing potentially before a real judge or an academic or a law firm partner or a retired judge? What's that moment like?
Look, you're probably shaking.
Okay.
You're breathing probably quite deeply, and I think there's a sort of transitional moment when you're in that state of nervousness and you're just trying to begin presenting your case, and then at some point you become immersed, and I suppose you become lost in what you're doing. You enter a state of flow, and then it's just this incredible sort of conversation of minds between you and the judge or judges, I suppose. So, and then of course once the moot finishes, you just breathe this absolute sigh of relief, and then you go, I want to do that again, and it becomes this sort of quite enjoyable, addictive process, I think.
Like a roller coaster.
Absolutely, yes.
So you wait for the flow, get over the nervous butterflies, and then go with the flow.
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
As a student who was learning mooting here, both inside and outside the classroom, what was your favourite feature of this moot court?
I really liked the public gallery. One of the units that Monash runs is called Mooting and Advocacy, and it's actually run by a prominent silk in Victoria. And during those classes, we got to watch our peers moot, and the judges were also peers, and we all just got to sit and observe and see how people advocated, I suppose. And that was really useful because when you're actually there yourself speaking, you're often not so conscious of various tendencies you might have, whether that's to, let's say, speak too quickly or slowly, to dodge and weave a little bit. But when you can see your peers up there, and this includes things they're doing well as well, that can really inspire you to examine your own mooting styles and figure out how to refine that, I suppose. So, yeah, I think it's a great sort of interactive space in that sense for learning as well.
Okay. Many people watching this may be looking at you and listening to you, William, and going, wow, he's really self-assured and he's articulate, and you could record what he's saying and there'd be no errors in a transcript. But again, share with us, was that a journey for you that, this is part learned experience, part the number of moots you do, that you've gone on a journey as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. I think when I started at Monash, even though I'd done debating, I wasn't a particularly confident public speaker or anything like that. But as time went on, just through repeated exposure and through, I suppose, affirmation of those efforts and meeting other like-minded people and going, this is something that we all enjoy and that we're getting better at and that we seem now to have a grasp of, I think I sort of felt more confident over time. But I think everyone basically goes through periods where, you might feel a little bit unsure, but, I think my journey here has really helped make me more confident.
William, what role do you think that this moot court plays in the success of our teams in the mooting competitions, both here in Australia and overseas?
Earlier I mentioned that, first of all, I think most simply it's great presentation-wise. You really look like you're in a courtroom, that you're taking it seriously, and I think that can have a bit of an effect on whoever's listening to you. I think also it's a realistic practice environment, and that's good, I think, to really get you in the zone and performing at your best even during practice sessions. And I think the fact that you can practice and do the moot in the very same venue means that things like your memory retention and your sense of stability and so forth, they're all sort of carried forth from the practice sessions into the real moot, as opposed to, say, if you were practicing in just a random conference room and then suddenly coming here. I think I put that down to the availability of the moot court. It really is just dedicated for mooting. It's not just a random classroom, for instance.
I suppose in anything, when you're preparing in something that is the courtroom versus just over a table, there's something about the setting that makes a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Another key to what I think is part of Monash Law's success in mooting is obviously our various moot coaches, and we're fortunate to have Mr. William Lai, KC, who is in practice but also one of our alumni. You've recently co-hosted the annual Monash Law Dinner, where you told us that you were inspired by lawyers of diverse ethnic backgrounds, including Mr. Lai. How does a diversity in education and law inspire you?
I think William always used to have this saying, which was that you cannot be what you cannot see. And I think at the time I thought, that's sort of a nice, catchy saying, but over time I sort of realised that there is a lot of truth to it. I think that just on some unconscious level, if you can see people who resemble you in some way, it just reaffirms for you that, I can do well in this area, in this industry or profession. So it's inspirational and affirming in that way as well. And I think also being able to have a mentor who understands the cultural backgrounds and the norms and the ways of thinking that you're coming from really helps as well in difficult, I suppose, to quantify ways, but I've found it incredibly helpful to have William not only as a moot coach, but as a mentor more broadly as well. I think diversity is absolutely important.
So from the diversity and inclusion perspective, as you've said, echoing William, you cannot be what you cannot see, but I suppose the flip side from a different perspective works as well, which is you cannot see what you can be unless you've got role models like William and our academics and our other coaches and others. And it is one of the things I know as Dean, any law school tries to make part of a good legal education, which is this: there is a role modelling aspect about what it means to be a professional. There's a role modelling of what it means to be inclusive and to appreciate the value of diversity and other things. There's a role modelling of an ethic of service. There is certainly all the technical skills and knowledge of being a lawyer, but there's so much more, as I think your answers are showing us. There's so much more that's going on in a law school for a law student than just the sort of the knowing the rules and the exceptions and being able to work the rules.
Absolutely, and I think just adding to that as well, I'm recalling now that William would share stories from us in his practice. He would practice in Malaysia and various areas outside of Australia, and he'd share stories with us where he'd been acting for, let's say certain royal families or people from a non-English background, and he would talk about how his understanding of non-English backgrounds would help him communicate with his clients in a way that other lawyers couldn't necessarily. So I think on top of the feelings of inspiration and support that you can have, it can genuinely make you a more versatile, a better lawyer if you get more cultural perspectives. So that's what I wanted to share, I think.
So I think what I'm hearing also is that there's a range of literacies that go with being a successful law student and successful law graduate, successful lawyer. And yes, there's technical legal literacy, and law can be a business. Even in a law school, law is a business. We've got to be able to sort of fund things. So that you've got to have a certain level of financial literacy and
Absolutely.
a certain level of commercial literacy if you're going to be advising commercial clients, and a certain amount of cultural literacy that you've just described it can be very important in client context as well. You've recently started working as an associate in the Court of Appeal in the Supreme Court of Victoria. How has your mooting experience helped you prepare for that role?
Immeasurably. I think from day one of that role, I was reading written submissions from parties and none of it felt foreign to me. It felt like perhaps a slightly longer, more sophisticated version of what we were doing, but fundamentally what was going on, the application of law to facts, the invocation of case law and the combination of all that to try and persuade the judge that you're right, I suppose. All of that felt incredibly familiar. And not only the ability to read what was going on and interpret what was going on, but actually to formulate your own arguments and solutions to those problems. Because of course, working at the court, often it's quite difficult because you actually have to come up with the solution to some of these seemingly intractable questions for which both sides are presenting very robust arguments. So you need to find some way often of saying, okay, this is why I think side A is stronger than side B or is correct, despite the compelling strength of both sides. So that ability to interpret and formulate arguments, all of that came from mooting, and I don't really know what I would have been like without it. So I was incredibly grateful for that experience.
And I suppose you see examples in that work of good submissions and good pleadings and bad submissions and bad pleadings and good advocacy and bad advocacy. So you get to calibrate what the standards are in that sense. For anyone watching this who's a student and might be thinking about possible legal careers and what can you do with a law degree first year out of law, obviously you've shown one of those is you can be a judge's associate. So for the benefit of those who are thinking in that mode, what's the other advantages of being a judge's associate? Or what's the best part of that experience?
I think it's probably getting to speak every day and work with every day an incredibly experienced lawyer. So someone who can read and formulate those arguments, but also someone who understands often the reality of what's going on. So there are, I think, often things which might not be explicitly expressed in submissions, but the judge is able to divine them through their years of experience. You of course get a lot of great career guidance and advice and support. You can build up your networks through working at the court, not only through your judge, but through a cohort of like-minded student or former students, current lawyers usually, who obviously are taking their career seriously. So I think the advantages are myriad, and if you can do one, you absolutely should.
Okay. I suppose having an eye for detail matters as an associate, as it does in most other legal careers.
Mm-hmm.
You've prompted me to remember that I once was a judge's associate, many decades ago, of course, and the way we selected juries was we had a jury barrel with numbers, and an eye for detail is necessary because someone forgot to tell me that you've got to lock the jury barrel before you roll it, and so I didn't lock it, didn't know to lock it, and all these numbers came spilling out. I'm on the ground trying to pick up the numbers to put them back in the jury barrel with everybody in the audience waiting for me so we could select a jury. So an eye for detail is important as an associate and everything else. I've also had the privilege, William, of working with you as my research assistant. Hopefully you've learned a few things in that time. What's your secret for managing your time when you're studying a double degree, competing in mooting competitions, working as a research assistant, maybe got a part-time job, having a life? What's the secret? How have you been able to do it?
I would probably dispute the having a life component. No, I think it would come down to a few things for me personally, and it differs for everyone. But for me, I think one was just being really mindful with my time. So I would often note down what I was doing in particular hours of my day, for instance. And that's not to plan, but rather once I spent, say, 2 hours on studying ethics, for instance, I would write that down, and then I could look back at the end of the day and see how I was spending my time, where perhaps I was frittering my time, and how to sort of make optimizations. So seeing it laid out in front of you can often show you how much time you actually do have during your week, on top of sleeping and all of those things. I think a second thing is probably to enjoy what you're doing as well. I think often if you're struggling to enjoy what you're doing, things can drag on, you can procrastinate and so forth. But if you can really just try and immerse yourself in the process, in that experience, and be mindful, I suppose, often you can find that the experience of being short of time, of being panicked, just sort of evaporates when you're actually in the middle of it. So I think those are two things that probably come to mind. And the third and final point would probably just be mindful of making choices in your life and not necessarily feeling like you have to take everything on, being like, what are the things that I actually want to do, that I enjoy, that will advance me to where I want to be, and focusing on those. So I think it's a series of optimizations probably, and throwing yourself in and enjoying the moment as well.
That word choice is important because you've got to actively take charge of what's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
And there are a number of ways people can approach balancing things, but you've got to work out what works for you, but you have choices to make. So inform yourself about those choices, about how you operate and how you work, is what I'm hearing, because that word choice, as I said, is very, very significant.
Definitely.
What about your future career plans, William? Are we likely to see you back here at Monash Law in the future as one of our mooting coaches? What does the future hold?
Well, I recently sat the Victorian bar exam, and happily and fortunately I passed. So next year in 2025, hopefully I'll be sitting the reader's course and going down that path. In the meantime, I'll probably continue working at the court as an associate for the time being, but there may well be a future where I am, say, back at Monash Law. Certainly During my time at Monash Law, I tutored students in trusts and evidence through the Student Tutorials program, which is run by the Law Society but sponsored by the faculty. And I really, really enjoyed that. So perhaps that's something that I could do as well if an opportunity like that arose. So I suppose my paths are open, but certainly Monash Law has always got a fond place in my heart.
Okay. So I didn't hear academic mentioned there as being a future career option, but you've helped us understand at least a couple of immediate post-law school options. You know, there's being a judge's associate, there's being a barrister, but there's also obviously through mooting and other things a way in which alumni, including recent graduates, can become involved. I like to think that we've got a cohort, a living chain of those who've been involved in mooting at Monash Law, and some of those are naturally in touch with one another across the generations, and it's always important to pay it forward, to use that expression, to be able to come back, as many have, to give time as a coach or to give time as in practice moots to be one of the judges. And I know many of our alumni, including young alumni, do that. So I certainly hope you'll be part of that cohort as well, because you, as people can see from what we've done today, you have a lot to give.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Thank you so much for all this, William. I'm glad that we've maximised, and you've maximised, the opportunities provided by our state-of-the-art moot court, and I'm very proud to have watched you along the way. Thanks for sharing your Monash Law experience with us, and best wishes for the future.
Thank you again, Brian, and it's been an absolute pleasure as well.